This course is going to get really practical really fast. But before we get into the nitty-gritty details of selling software with integrated payments, I need to cover two important topics first. I want to talk about the wrong approach, and then I want to talk about the right approach to selling software with integrated payments. And this is specifically for those of you that have been selling payment processing, credit card processing. And so this is going to apply to those of you that are individual agents and those of you that are working with a team of agents to really understand the wrong approach and the right approach. Now, let me preface this by saying, again, I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of individual salespeople. I've worked with dozens of sales teams as they've tried to make this transition. I've seen many of them try and fail, and I've seen many of them try and succeed. And so what I'm about to tell you is based on a lot of experience of watching this process play out. And so I'm very confident in the advice that I'm about to give you. Let's start with the wrong approach. Now, the wrong approach is something I've seen play out so many times, and it goes something like this. You're already selling credit card processing services, and so the rationale or the assumptions in your head are telling you that I'm already out there talking to all of these small business owners, and I'm already selling them one thing, payment processing. Why can't I just add on to that and start selling them software? That makes sense, right? I'm already talking to these prospects. They're the same prospects. Why don't I just sell them software while I'm at it? And so this approach has been tried many, many times, and it has failed many, many times. I don't want to say every time. I'm sure there's somebody out there that's going to watch this video that's going to say, that's what I do, and it works. But I've seen it fail so many times, I'm convinced it is the wrong approach. And let me see if I can give you an example that will help drive home the problem with this, okay? Let's imagine for a moment that you own a car dealership. Okay, you own a car dealership. And so you realize there's all these people coming into the car dealership that are wanting to purchase a car. And so you're selling cars, you're doing very well with that. And all of a sudden you start to say, wait a second, we're already talking to these people that are buying a car, but they also, many of them are looking to buy a house. Many of them, have homes. I think we're going to go ahead and get all of our car salesmen licensed to sell real estate, because after all, where do you park a car? Well, you park it in the garage. So when people come in to buy a car, we're going to talk to them about the car, and before we even close on that, we're going to also say that there's several houses we have for sale, and let's see if we can sell them a house so they have a garage to park the car. That makes a lot of sense, right? Well, intuitively, me describing that to you, intuitively that's a horrible idea, right? Now, why is it such a horrible idea? Well, there's really two reasons why that is just such a bad idea. The first reason it's a bad idea is that, let's face it, not everybody who buys a car is looking to buy a house, right? And so pitching everybody a house is probably going to annoy some people, and it's going to be a very big distraction in the sales process. So the first reason is just that these two things are just very, very different. Selling a car and selling a house, very different decisions, right? The car is definitely not as big of a purchasing decision. The way people think about buying a car, the way a prospect thinks about buying a car, it's a big decision, but it's very different from the way that people think about buying a house. A house is a much bigger purchasing decision. And there's a lot more that goes into it, right? A lot more decision making that goes into it, a lot more preparation. And so the problems are really endless, but the two big ones are it's this very different thing. And so not everybody that wants the car is going to be interested in the house and vice versa. But the other big problem with it is that the sales process becomes very disjointed. What are you trying to sell here? Are you trying to sell a car or are you trying to sell a house? You kind of got to pick one, right? Now, if you are somebody that maybe is a car salesman and you also happen to sell real estate in the evenings, right? And you're a licensed realtor, is it possible that you might meet somebody after selling them a vehicle and they mention that they're house hunting and you say, well, you know what? I'm actually a realtor in the evenings. Maybe I could show you a house. Of course that's going to happen, and it should happen. If you're selling two things, you certainly would want to be out selling a house to somebody and saying, hey, by the way, I don't know if you realize this or not, but I'm also a car salesman down at the dealership and you can swing by there. I'd love to give you a good deal there as well. So certainly there should be some back and forth and similar prospects and, trying to get interest on both sides of it, but the sales process for these two things should remain, by and large, completely separated. We don't want to mess up our sales process of selling a car by stopping midstream and start talking about a house, because for the prospect, that is too big of a shift for them. How does this relate to merchant services sales and software? Well, I equate selling payment processing and the decision involved with that very similar to the decision of buying a car for a business owner. For a business owner, payment processing is actually a very important decision, and it's one that they take very seriously, right? But ultimately, making that decision is not very disruptive, or at least it shouldn't be very disruptive for their business. If they have a standalone terminal there, well, they've been through this before. They're going to swap the terminal out. Maybe it has a few extra features they need to learn. But, you know, just like with a car, it's like I've driven a car before. I got a new one. It's got a few extra buttons, but I know how to drive a car. It's not that big of a deal, you know? Same thing when a business owner is buying payment processing. But software purchase is much more for them like buying a house. It's like a huge life-altering long-term decision where it's like, I'm going to have this software for a long time. It's going to be connected to my accounting. It's going to be connected to my inventory. It's going to be doing my payroll as people clock in and clock out. It's going to be doing my marketing as I'm, potentially doing loyalty and rewards programs. And so as a business owner, they look at software as like buying a house. It's like, oh my goodness, this is a huge decision. All these things to think about. And so trying to sell both payment processing and software simultaneously and trying to mix the two up simply does not work very well. So in the next video, let's talk about what does work.